the discussion forward in terms of the women that were honored last night. So I just want to say a very good morning to my panelists this morning. And of course, I've got a big audience, a very good morning to you. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, ladies, we do have a visitor this morning on our panel, Mr. Imraan Patel. Mr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome, Mr. Imraan Patel is, of course, the Deputy Director General of the Research and, of course, Support. Thank you so much, Mr. Patel, for joining us. Basically, tell us about the rank that you do, your work that you do, and maybe talk to us about the importance of the awards. We understand that the awards, of course, have taken a hiatus for 4 years due to COVID-related reasons, of which is a great reason to actually start this discussion, because we've got researchers on this panel basically focused on such issues surrounded around pandemics and, of course, funding around models for pandemic research.
Thanks, and good morning. Let me also extend my condolences on behalf of the Department of Science and Innovation on the sad passing of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. As you indicated, our condolences to the family and to the Zulu nation. And thanks for inviting me to the panel. I feel slightly out of place, but also not out of place. And part of that is that gender equality and women's empowerment is a very, very strong focus and part of the Department of Science and Innovation strategic plan. This particular awards event has a long history. We started this almost 20 years ago, ran 16 sessions in succession, but then was hit with COVID. And the intention is to celebrate the growing population of women researchers in all fields. I mean, I was just speaking to Judy earlier this morning. Even though there are areas that we still have problems, engineering, sciences, etc. But in some fields, women have done exceptionally well in terms of leading the areas of focus. I mean, some of the awardees yesterday, whether it's in technology spaces like waste valorization, or whether it's around new ways of dealing with gender-based violence, etc. Women are leading across the board. It's not only in areas that were traditionally there, even in the engineering sciences. So the Women in Science is, in fact, a premier activity where we celebrate women researchers. But this is complemented by a range of issues, because I don't think you can just have an award ceremony and feel good about it and that's it. It has to be backed up by long and hard work around transforming the gender composition of our research community. So through our programs like the Research Chairs Initiative, Centers of Excellence Initiative, etc., demographic representation is a key part of this. In our targets to the NRF, where funding is required, we have made specific requirement for specific targets on different demographic groups. We also work, for example, in the technology space with women entrepreneurs, etc. So what we're trying to do in the Department of Science and Innovation is a broad-based effort, not only focusing on individual researchers, but very importantly, focusing on institutional factors that can prevent women researchers from reaching their pinnacle. So I hope that, and my role here is just to briefly say what the department's doing, but more to listen to what can we do better in the future. And I'm sure there's many of my colleagues in the audience. I can give you the guarantees that whatever is said here, we take seriously as part of our effort to improve what we do as a department.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. We certainly love the idea of men that listen. And do something about it, right? Dr. Judy Dlamini, of course, she's the Chancellor of the University of the Witwatersrand. Doctor, I'm going to give each and every one of you ladies welcome. Once again, congratulations. If you are one of the nominees yesterday and you've won something, I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourselves. Dr. Judy, listen, your speech yesterday, so touching, on the back of the minister talking about trying to find collaborative ways to deal with GBV, particularly that is led by men. And I'd like to hear Mr. Patel's word on that, because we've always had a debate centered around the fact that, you know, when we talk about GBV, the people that are mostly the perpetrators are never included in that debate. So talk to us about that, Dr. Judy. And of course, some of the things that we also as women can do to ensure that the men, because we are mothers, we are sisters, what can we do in our supportive roles?
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much, Alicia. It's important for me, like Imraan, to just offer my condolences to the Shenge family and the colleagues, the friends, and may his soul rest in peace. Good morning, and good morning to the viewers. We need to get to the root causes of gender-based violence and femicide. And I was very encouraged last night because I was looking at just the diversity of the research areas that the women are tackling. And there was quite a bit on gender-based violence, as Prof, I'm sure will talk to that, the work that she's been doing in terms of violence against children, in terms of therapeutic interventions when it comes to gender-based violence. And again, as I said yesterday, I was I was the founding chairman of the GBVF Response Fund, which was really a call from women themselves, activists on the ground, to say, government do something, and the collaboration between government and the private sector gave birth to that. So it's a multi-pronged approach. There is a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide, which has 6 pillars, and each of those pillars matters. And research is pillar 6. Pillar 5 is economic empowerment of women, which matters, amongst many others. But I do believe that we need a multi-pronged approach. We need collaboration across sectors, because there's a lot of, when you say gender-based violence, people think of violence. They don't think about the emotional harassment that women endure in business, in academia, at our homes. It's all over. So we need to be quite deliberate about looking at gender harm in general and what brings this about. And you say, as parents, what can we do? As teachers, I always talk about the 2 layers of leadership that we encounter as a child. And it's the messages, you know, the overt and subtle messages that we send to a girl child, that, we vila when you won't be married by anyone. Right? This intelligent, beautiful thing is weighed against being married by someone. And, you know, so I think we need to unlearn the messages that devalue women. Yeah, it's a topic for days.
And right on the back of this, of course, Professor Floretta Boonzaier from the University of Cape Town, and of course, you were second runner-up. Congratulations to her, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations, Professor. And Professor, interestingly enough, you know, your study focuses on gendered and sexual violence identity and the decolonial feminist psychology. Talk to us about that and these conversations that we are currently engaging in. It seems that there's no fruit being born out of them.
Yes.
Because it basically seems like we are talking heads. The initiative is there, but necessarily we're not seeing the action.
Yes. Thank you, Alicia. I want to reiterate what Dr. Dlamini has just said, that I think all of us can do something in our different spheres of influence in terms of challenging just the everydayness of violence that women experience in their lives as women. That on the one hand, we talk about gender-based violence and femicide as the extreme forms of violence, but we do need to challenge the everyday ways in which women are excluded from participation in business, science, you know, public life more generally, politics, and the kinds of everyday harassments and violence that they experience. And that also, of course, goes down to gender norms and the ways in which women are objectified in the everyday. So we need to look at the links between the different types of violence. So in terms of my research, I've been doing work with both survivors and perpetrators of gender-based violence, and working closely with programs for survivors in terms of looking at how these programs are able to meet the needs of survivors, but then looking at work, and I think all of this does need to happen simultaneously, that, you know, you are focusing on survivors, but then also focusing on perpetration. Yeah. As we said, we can't leave that part of the story. That men also, of course, need to take ownership. But looking at the programs we have in terms of working with men, what are some of the best practices in terms of working with men to end violence against women? And so, to again reiterate what Dr. Dlamini says, we do need a whole society approach to ending gender-based violence and femicide.
Absolutely. And of course, on your right there, let's welcome distinguished woman researcher, Dr. Patience Mthunzi-Kufa from the Council for Scientific as well as Industrial Research. Now, you won a special award in technology last night. Congratulations. Doctor, look, I mean, I know this, in your field, is there ever a special focus to, you know, GBV? And of course, we've seen that studies show that over 50%, now over 50% of women that enter the field of the STEM fields, that is your science, your technology, or your engineering, and of course your mathematics, over 50% of these women have suffered or will face some sort of gender bias or sexual harassment in the workplace. How do you deal with such issues?
Thank you very much, Alicia, and good morning to everyone. So yes, it's an issue that resonates. I remember, I'll share a personal experience when I was very junior in my undergraduate years. I was a student at Rao, not UJ, Rao. And at the time, the institution was giving lectures, study guides. Some of the textbooks were in Afrikaans. And I would be the only black person in my classes. And I remember in second year, in a physics class, a professor saying to me, he was obviously white male, saying to me, why don't you just stop it, drop it. Black people cannot see in 3 dimensions. You will never make it as a physicist.
Yeah. Imagine.
And it was as straight as that. And I mean, that stuck to my brain cells, and it became, I mean, I became those words because I was young, impressionable, and you know, you tend to believe it. Yeah. And that's where I stopped physics. I decided, you know, this is not for me, this is not for black people, so I'm just gonna abandon it. So yes, it happens. And I'm very grateful to all the people who supported me, some who are also black, male, and who are physicists, who said, you know what, you can do this. I remember there was a very senior but very strong black physics male who I met just before I started my PhD, who said to me, you will look for an institution where you will get a PhD in physics. And I did that, and I went to Scotland, and I qualified with a PhD in physics. But it was very difficult because I had to unlearn what was imprinted in me, you know. So, yes, it's a serious issue, and it's sad to know that there's still subtle matters like that in our country. So we really need to fight hard to get rid of it.
All right, look, on your far right there is Ms. Gizelle Roque van Niekerk from the University of Pretoria. Ladies and gentlemen, she won 70K to advance her research last night. Congratulations. Gizelle, maybe welcome, a very good morning to you. Look, maybe tell us a bit about what your research focuses on, and also what this topic that we are currently in line with in terms of course, sexual harassment or GBV, particularly in the fields of science.
Thank you so much. So my research, in essence, is to valorize waste eggshells into a value-added calcium-based metal organic framework. And so to break it down, South Africa and the world at large, we have many different forms of waste. Mine focused on eggshells and plastic in order to eliminate those substances from our dumping sites. Specifically in South Africa, because we are a developing nation, we don't have such an advanced waste disposal system like in developed nations such as America, where everything gets segregated and sent to specific places, depending on what the waste is. But in South Africa, a lot of it gets sent to dumping sites. We don't have enclosed landfills where the leachate is protected from contaminating the environment. But here, rather, it seeps into our groundwater, contaminates it, and it ends up inside our bodies and inside our systems. So eggshells specifically release hydrogen sulfide. I'm sure if you've left eggshells in your dustbin for too long, you know what that smells like. And plastic releases phthalates, which are known endocrine disruptors, and they can cause birth defects and infertility, specifically in men. So the aim of the project was to valorize these two specific wastes into a metal-organic framework, which is a substance that can absorb specific kinds of gases, and mine specifically focused on carbon dioxide gas, so to reduce it from the atmosphere in line with the IPCC agreements and the Paris agreements in terms of global warming. So that is what my research is about in essence. And then regarding this theme, it's so relevant today. I must say I have been extremely fortunate at the University of Pretoria to have had a phenomenal supervisor, Prof. Henrietta Langmi. She has studied all over the world and brought all of that wonderful research back to South Africa. I chose her for my honors, and I've stuck with her since, for my honors and for my masters, and she's been such an amazing mentor to me. And I think it's so valuable, especially as an emerging researcher. I'm a master's student, still very young. I look back and I see how far I've come, but at the same time, in terms of an academic career, I've got such a long way to go. And at this stage, you almost don't know what you don't know. You know, so you really need somebody to guide you along the way, every step of the way, and she's really been that for me. And I've also been fortunate because I did an undergraduate in environmental science and my honors in chemistry. I have a foot in 2 departments at UP, and my mentors in the geography departments are mostly male, and they've also been really, really phenomenal. Specifically, 2 come to mind, and I grew a relationship with them from my undergraduate. I was top of the class in their modules, and they invited me back to come and tutor and eventually to be an assistant lecturer. And I think it's also very important for not only strong women to be great mentors for younger women, but also for men in research to be excellent mentors for emerging young women researchers. Because it's really the men like that, you know, transform our society and can get rid of those stereotypes that we hit the glass ceiling with all the time. So yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for that. Back to Mr. Patel. Mr. Patel, it says that 30% of women in South Africa actually choose to study in the STEM fields. As I've explained, it's your science, your technology, engineering, and of course your mathematics. And only a third of those will graduate, just like, of course, Miss, I think on your right there, Miss Gizelle, Roque, van Niekerk on your right there. Why do you think we are still seeing such a marginalized, demographic, particularly of women, and not to mention black women in this field? What are we not doing correctly?
I don't know. I was, like you said, you wanted to, I was here to listen, so I would like to, I would like to get a sense, but let me postulate, because some of those numbers are changing. So I think let's acknowledge the kind of positives. I've been looking at the numbers recently of numbers of people graduating or moving up the STEM system, and whether our long-term measures that we began to start a long time ago, in 1994, there was a very strong commitment to gender equality, so maybe some of that is coming through. But in the STEM field, some of those numbers are changing. Slowly, but some of the numbers are changing. I still believe that there's areas that, and a few issues were raised already here that I think we need to think about a bit more deeply as the DSI. Issues like supervisory capacity, role models as an example. Are those preventing people coming through the system? My worry particularly is the intersectionality that Judy spoke about. If you look at those numbers, there might be differences between urban and rural women, between black and white women, etc. So really you need to diagnose this problem not in a very general way, but in a specific way. Even to the extent that there are differences in provinces. I mean, if you look at numbers, we've been recently to the University of Venda, very different culture to a Wits university. I'm sure most of the universities have their transformation committees, etc., and are designing individually what is it that needs to be done in that environment. I mean, issues, we don't like the terminology around toxic masculinity, overt efforts to prevent women from going, are predominant in some sectors and not in other sectors. I mean, there are very strong role models in some universities or not. So I think as we move forward, particularly if we want to make progress, we need to be purposeful and we need to be very targeted. I think we've been too broad-brushed in the past, and that was fine, we've lifted. But now as you try to make a greater incremental change, you need to understand that. Is it, for example, a lot more toxic in the physics sector? I mean, I was at a conference, an international conference on theoretical physics, instrumentation, and this issue came up. And it's not only a South African issue. I mean, there were people from CERN and some of the big physics projects, and there was an acknowledgement there that there's a big gender divide. I think the one that was mentioned predominantly in the IT sector with its cases. So we need to be able to focus on different areas. And like I said, I don't know that. I think in this collection of people in the room, we would be able to gather that the human sciences are very different. In some instances, the human sciences are dominated by women, whereas in the kind of hard engineering sciences, is it the kind of things that patients spoke about, etc. So there's no easy answers, and that's why people like me are in the job, because we have to sit and think about this and make it our problem, and with the department, use the instruments that are available to us to be a lot more targeted in terms of what we're doing. And I hope that we would not disappoint in that regard.
All right, Mr. Khan, I just wanted to know, because it looks like apparently it's still within the organizational structures and the policies that have not progressed to ensure that women particularly are actually supported. Say, for example, if a woman will come through and report a gender-based violence or a sexual harassment case, then she has to be the one that leaves the workplace, because the perpetrator is going to be the one that is going to be supported. And basically, the woman gets no support. So maybe what are the kind of conversations that are being had around reforming those organizational structures?
I think the issue is mentioned. This is an all-of-society effort. Leadership at all levels need to make this their responsibility, whether it's in the university sector. You mentioned earlier the Transforming Mentalities initiative. Although the branding is around transforming mentalities, it's not just about the mental. That's a very important part, but it's transforming the institutions. And the focus is not just on transforming mentalities. It's around gender equality and women's empowerment. Minister always highlights it's about gateway. So I would be looking at the councils, the university councils, etc. And the first step in there is to make sure that these conversations happen. Also to make sure that these conversations are not only raised by women. I think men needs to feel that if there are issues and they see it, they must raise it and not say, okay, we've responded to changes. So I think it's an all-of-society effort, and you need to deal with it institution by institution, sector by sector. I don't have the sense, but I think, again, there are some good practices. We've seen some of that during the Transforming Mentality Summit. There are some men's organizations that are driving this. The university leadership at that conference strongly supported both men and women, the need to not just talk about it, but to fundamentally deal with the difficult issues which are structural and institutional in a sense.
All right, so we take it he is listening and he's going to take those notes back to the relevant players. All right, Dr. Judy, something also that you mentioned in your speech yesterday, very interesting I found, is that the black woman demographic is still left behind purely due to their background as well as current social status. How do we change that dynamic? What needs to be done that hasn't been tried already?
You know, as I indicated yesterday, and I was talking to Imraan earlier on, is that one of our biggest challenges as society, and South Africa is no different, is that we focus on one social identity at a time. We'll be like, no, we need to sort out the race issue and we need to sort out the gender issue, not simultaneously. And as I said yesterday, when you're looking at race, black men will benefit because they have that social identity of privilege. They are men, gender. When you talk about let's sort out the gender issue, white women will benefit because they have a privilege in social identity based on how we view life. Where am I there? Right? Where am I? But just take, for an example, add another social identity. Maybe I'm from a private school, so I speak with a twang. Already, I'm an upper class. If I speak with my Bantu education accent and I come from a rural area, then I'm really not in the room, you know? So I do believe that we need to be quite deliberate, because if we continue to do that and not use an intersectional lens that looks at human beings holistically, we will forever have inequality. And my grandkids will never see equality in their lifetime. So we really need to change. And I think it's also important for us to have a way of monitoring and evaluation and do something about it. If you just focus on universities, there is an Athena Swan that I was talking to you about, started in the UK in 2005, that actually it started in science, looking at gender equality within the science space, but now it includes humanities, social sciences, and art, which is good because we need gender equality across the board. It's actually now been introduced in Australia, in Ireland. What does it say? It actually says, here are the criteria, and we will measure you annually against those criteria in terms of how you're doing when it comes to gender equality. And then you get a bronze award, you get a silver, a gold. Everyone wants to be gold. People love incentives, do things so that there's something in return for them. It's the same in business. The Bloomberg Gender Index, why don't we have it here? So all I'm saying, and there, it actually says to a company, your criteria, we see you have the ESG report. Let's talk gender. How are you doing? And I do believe we need to do that in business, in academia, because when we do that, then we'll start to see people trying to have the gold sticker, if you like. And in the process, it's not just women that benefit, but it's society that benefits. And actually in the US, around the Athena Swan thing, they have one that looks beyond gender, intersectionality, sexual orientation, disability, and what have you. And it goes further. It says our funding is going to be linked to how you perform. If you are a gold, you'll get this. If you are a silver, and so forth. So there are ways, there are solutions. We just need to embrace them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Professor Boonzaier, very interesting points from, of course, Dr. Judy there, but I just want to get your view on this. Black female South African professors constitutes less than 17% of the total academic workforce. How do you even start to explain this? Because we are sitting here, we are saying we want to encourage young black women to go into these fields, but what are some of the issues that you are still facing, particularly in making the journey and being part of that 1/3 that actually gets to graduate?
Yes. Alicia, I'm so glad you asked that question. We were leading towards it. I think when we were talking about what keeps women out, supposedly keeps women out of STEM fields,
Yes.
we need to think about the hostile environments that they encounter, right? And we're talking about openly hostile, you know, based on the experience you shared, and other forms of hostility that keep women out. But then the intersectional lens is really important. We are talking about black women being kept out. And so the question of advancing in the professoriate, I mean, how do we sit in this current moment with that statistic across universities in this country, and look at where that in the professoriate, black women are massively underrepresented.
Absolutely.
And so the question to be asked, and I want to pick up on what Dr. Dlamini said, the question to be asked is, it's not just about incentives, really, but it's about accountability. Every year, institutions have to submit these statistics. And how are they not held accountable for that?
Absolutely.
You know? And it's not to say, I mean, if you look at the winners in the categories, it's not to say black women are not there. We are there. But why are we not in the professoriate at our institutions? And why does it take us that long to get there?
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, there are a whole range of other things around targeted mentoring and next generation professoriate programs and the range of things which are all important. But I think the question of accountability is fundamental.
So true.
Absolutely. Look, Dr. Mthunzi-Kufa, I mean, leadership roles within the tech companies, I think you can attest, minimal to none. Talk to us about that and how you've actually maybe tried to further discussions around how we can actually introduce more leadership roles to women, not just on oversight, just to make sure that these women are actually at the decision making and at the forefront of all these roles.
Okay, again, I'll refer to personal experience. So
We like that.
Yeah. In my case, I've not given up, but I've shifted focus from wanting to be the leader that sits in the leader's office and be the leader, but to being the leader that leads where I am. So at the level I am, that's where I lead, because I realized that if I want to be, let's say, for example, the head of something that's, distinguished and looked at by by everybody as this is the highest position, it's not happening, okay? So you learn as a woman scientist or a leader in tech to lead with your people where you are and ensuring that you are opening opportunities to those you're working with. Yes, to ensuring that they also understand that it doesn't necessarily have to be in a glass office that you lead. You can lead where you are. And you can be an effective leader, and maybe even more effective leader, where you're on the ground than if you're in an elaborate position that's put out there. I have, like I say, I don't want to use the word I've given up, but I've come across such difficulty in getting the promotion that a few days ago I was actually applying for my career ladder promotion, and I was so reluctant because it's okay, you put all this effort, but are you going to realize the position that you're applying for at the end of the day? So it's very difficult. I don't know what the answer is, but maybe like Prof has said, we need to be intentional about ensuring that if there's a KRA to C, Chief Research Scientist, let it be ticked. Someone needs to ensure that that KRA is met. So I don't. It's a difficult one.
Gizelle, South Africa has the highest share of female graduates in sub-Saharan Africa at 32%. Why are we not seeing these females? Where are they? What are they doing to advance other female and women-related topics and leadership issues, and being at the forefront of those female-related issues and struggles?
Sure, that is a really profound question, actually. And it's something that I've thought about so much myself, being an undergraduate and then an honors and then a master's student at UP, and now in the sort of position where I am dealing with the undergraduates as an assistant lead lecturer, and before it was as a tutor. And what I've realized is that a lot of females, especially at undergraduate level, I noticed that they'll come to me and they look a bit like down and despaired, and they'll share very confidential and private things with me about how they're struggling relating to this or relating to that. And specifically, I want to say, I really think that South Africa can do a lot more in terms of educating females at a young age about sex protection, not falling pregnant before you have gotten your degree. Because, you know, it's so unfortunate that you have the opportunity to go and study at undergraduate level and get yourself a degree, and second year in, you fall pregnant. And I think that actually falls on us as a nation. We need to transform the mentality, because I know that I am where I am today because I haven't had that responsibility placed on me at such a young age. I was able to dedicate my focus towards my studies uninterrupted. And so I really do think that we can make a lot of progress in terms of that. And then also, yes, it falls on us as women who are emerging in the scientific field to really encourage the young girls of South Africa. I always say to them, you're doing so well, you've got it. Believe in yourself. You're going to ace this semester test. Because I think we second doubt ourselves so much. Men are born with this natural, innate confidence. And whereas in our women brain, we triple check ourselves. We really do triple check ourselves all the time. And we have to massage egos to get to where we are, and sometimes get spoken down to, even though we know the answer to the question already. And so what I also want to say is, yes, I believe in these conversations, but what I've tried to do is to take matters into my own hands in my sphere of influence as much as I can. And this includes things like, controversially, not hiding your femininity. As a woman in STEM, I think, especially when I joined my honors, when I entered into my honors, a lot of men in the laboratory, and pants, flat shoes, hair tied back. I'm sure we're all familiar with this. And we're almost trying to be men so that we can be respected and be accepted. What I tried to do was challenge this. Do your makeup, put on lipstick, dress
Wear your
up.
heels.
Wear your heels.
Go ahead, Gizelle.
So I'll often get told, oh, you look so nice. Where are you going today? No, I'm just coming to work. Because the only way that we're actually going to fight this is not in the mentality of men. We need to fight it in our own way as a female. We have been given by God specific talents and specific abilities, and we need to utilize that to our full potential to fight this conversation. And other things like, sorry, I was not finished talking. Please don't interrupt me. Talking loud. Ladies, talk loud, please. I know we have inside voices, and society has over time taught us to be quiet, but we are beautiful and we are capable and we are confident, and if you walk in that mentality, you'll see how things change. Take a seat at the table. Don't stand around the boardroom, please. Get in and sit down. You are present. You are part of the conversation. And give your opinion. Don't wait until you're asked. I think that we should do this. Okay, don't wait for somebody to take notice of you. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. Nobody is going to try and consider you when you're in the back of the room. Please step forward. We need to join and fight this together as a group of ladies. And that's why this Department of Science and Innovation Women Awards is phenomenal. Such an amazing event, and it's so progressive in the nation and in enabling us to proceed in our STEM careers.
Ah, thank you, Gizelle. Well said right there. Thank you. And in closing, Mr. Khan, I mean, just off the back of what Gizelle has just said, I mean, it is a reality. Men still generally hold all the senior leadership positions in most industries, particularly in the STEM fields. Professional blackmail, women are scared to not do what their boss orders them to do because they're going to lose their jobs, you're not going to get your contract renewed. How do we then, in your view, as men, not myself, but you as men, how would you then change this dynamic and bring forward solutions to the impasse?
Well, I think the first is men need to learn that there's, I think the minister said it well, what's good for women.
There's new sheriffs in town.
It's not only good for women, it's good for society. So I think the first is to kind of accept that the way we've been socialized in the past is a problem. And I think historically there's a lot of evidence around it. So that's the first. I mean, at the Transforming Mentalities Summit, I think what was useful was the program director said, reflect on yourself. And that's the case. Every conversation here, we need to accept that there's baggage, myself, etc., and be reflective. That's the first. The second is we need to see ourselves as part of the solution. But what is that solution? That solution is not the threat. We need to, like I said, understand what needs to be done, listen, understand that the challenges being raised are legitimate challenges, and see what can be done in those instances. So I think at the end of the day, it's a combination of the personal combined with the institutional, because if the personal doesn't respond, then the institution has to create the kind of disincentives. And I've seen this beginning to happen, even amongst young people, the assertiveness. I was at a recent workshop and, we were talking as this kind of more established researchers of both men and women. But there was someone from the audience who was a young person said, yeah, but there's no young person on the panel. Yeah. And so to his credit, the facilitator said, then come and join us. Yeah. Almost immediately. Yeah. We're not going to wait till the next story to be able to say. And it's the same. I think we've been very cautious about this. If you come to our Science Forum South Africa as an example, it's very clear from the senior leadership level that all panels have to be gender balanced, 50-50. So it's all of those kind of factors, and it's also understanding. There's a lot of psychologists that won yesterday. I was told of a very interesting piece of research where, as a facilitator, which we do, there's a difference in who you ask to speak first. Yeah. If people put up their hands and you go to a man, women are less likely to speak. Knowing that deliberately then as a facilitator, we have to be taught, find the woman in the audience who has put up their hands.
Absolutely, Mr. Patel. So I mean, the sense of entitlement,
ways, there's all of these subtle ways that needs to be confronted with, but not in a challenging way. I think the minister has put this very well. It's empowering for men to be able to do. There's a weight of responsibility, No, it's not the case. Yes, as a society, we can grow a lot more if we harness the capabilities of everyone, not necessarily just men and women, but all of the other intersectional challenges that we have, rural versus urban. There's so much talent and support. How many, I don't know, someone made reference to 2 cases. How many others are we missing because we don't have the institutions in place? So I think the panel has reinforced the view that it's a combination of the personal and the institutional. And those require very different strategies, and let's see where it takes us.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Thank you so much. Dr. Patience, in closing, I mean, just off the back of what Mr. Patel has just said, I mean, that urban-rural woman divide. Let's talk about that. How do we then foster communications? I mean, I host a show that deals with consumer rights, and it basically talks to people that are in far-flung areas who don't even have access to technology to get the information that they need. How do we then start conscientizing those people that don't even have access to information to even be part of these discussions? Because, I mean, we need to get them moving.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. In my case, I make sure that I get my research to where the people are. And also, we are doing research that's making sure that it's going to be applicable in specifically those areas you're referring to. Peri-urban, rural areas where people are actually having difficulty in accessing healthcare. So the technologies that we are creating need to reach people where they are. And also, as scientists, I have a group of scientists from Venda, from KwaZulu-Natal, from all over the show, and I say to them, what are you doing for where you come from? Can we host a science day and go to KwaZulu-Natal in your rural town,
yes,
in a school there, and just talk to girls, talk to young people there and tell them about science? Can we get a student out from Soweto, bring them to the CSIR, host them for 4 days and do a job shadowing project with them? So you intentionally take the technology and research to people that if I, as patients, don't do it, they're not going to know it. They're not going to be exposed to it. So you need to actively just follow up on it and make sure that you are hands-on with the program as well.
Professor Boonzaier, in closing, very quickly, we are out of time. Also, just on the back of this, how do we then encourage those women that don't even have the necessary means to be at that seat at the table?
Yeah, I think we need to open up spaces for women to be who they are and come with their... We realize that it's the experiences we have as women who are, raised differently, come from urban versus rural, different socioeconomic backgrounds. Those experiences allow us to excel in the work that we do. And so in university spaces, it is about opening up so that the students we work with in particular can bring who they are to the work that they do, and that they don't have to leave that outside at the door and now be this academic and speak in a particular way and thinking, that those experiences come with them and shape the ways that they are able to excel in academia.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Dlamini, your kind final words in bridging the gap. What do we still need to do as South Africa in terms of diversifying the industry that is of the world of STEM fields?
Men are not born confident. That's fact. We tell them when they come out that they are better, right? We tell them that they should lead, they are providers, they shouldn't cry. It backfires when it doesn't work well, because then they use violence when they can't be those providers, right? And the violence is what we're dealing with. So let's change the conversation. Tell girls, you're great. Tell boys, you're great. You equal. You're just different, but we're equal. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I listened to Dr. Patience. She was told she can't do physics because she's a black girl. Mpumi Madisa, who's the CEO of the top 40, was told the same thing, and she left the course in first year, right? And then she becomes a PhD in physics. But what did she say right here? She's applied for that next position, but she knows she's the... We check out because we are sabotaged every single day. That's why I started Female Academic Leaders Fellowship, FALF, to remind them that, hey, you can do this. Let's see how we can help you to become the professor and so forth. So, call to action. Imraan? Prof, you spoke about accountability. You spoke about the statistics that is churned out. Can we, as a department, make those leaders in institutions of higher learning accountable? If it's 17%, what's the target? What is our gender parity target? and hold them accountable. Because unless we have gender parity targets in all sectors of our economy, and it's clear there are timelines, and there's recourse if they are not reached. KPIs, you know? So I think we have to do something. Talk is cheap.
Yep.
Right. Ladies, thank you so much for this progressive discussion this morning. I think we have achieved gender parity in this discussion, particularly. Mr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Judy, thank you so much. Ladies, thank you so much. And of course, we hope to see you in the near future, you know, spearheading some of those projects that are, you know, basically championing women issues. I'm one of those women. I'm a social activist. I'm a youth activist. I'm a cultural activist. I'm still, you know, enshrined in those values that say, you know what, let's go back to basics. Let's look at some of the things that do work. We are, unfortunately, going to leave it there. I am, unfortunately, out of time. That has been, of course, this debate with some great women here on the back of the DSI South African Women in Science Awards. I am Alicia Jali, and of course, thank you so much to my panelists that have been enjoying this debate with me. And of course, my lovely audience, give yourself a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, and that is where we're going to leave it now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great.